I was watching old TV shows from the 1970s. They were formulaic with predictable three-act structures. In Act 1, you learn the protagonist's goal. In Act 2, everything goes wrong, obstacles intervene, and everything breaks down in disaster. By Act 3, however, a happy ending is assured when the hero overcomes the obstacle. The happy ending is always assured in the half-hour sitcom. Nevertheless, even knowing that, I was so caught up in what I was watching yesterday that when everything went wrong in Act 2, I was actually nervous. But luckily, as per pattern, everything came out alright in the third act. And that's just the way that people in the United States like it. I mean, this is America, where everyone gets to reinvent himself, write his own story, and everyone deserves a second act. Well, this second act will be just like every other second act, where the hero encounters an obstacle. So what is the obstacle for us? Losing touch with our spirit as a people. I mean, the United States used to be the land of the free, but now 40% of young people believe that free speech is hate speech. And where support for socialism jumped nearly 10% to 49% among the youth. According to KGB defector Yuri Bezmenov, this ideological subversion happened because we allowed saboteurs to take over our school system and didn't challenge their propaganda with a contravening antidote of Americanism.
It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see.
I just got done reading The Phenomenology of Mind by German philosopher Hegel. Some of the things he wrote jumped out at me. For instance, he said that the constitution of a society embodies the spirit of a people. The government's sole purpose, he asserted, is to preserve that constitution and that spirit. When the government stops seeing its role as preserving the posterity of its people and stops defending its constitution, then calamity ensues. Hegel writes that it would be the derangement and dissolution of the state, in which there would no longer be a government, but only parties, and the violence and oppression of one party would only be helped away by the other. Ignoring the Constitution, no government, and only political parties ruling, kinda sounds like we're there. Hegel adds of that time period, such a condition of a nation is a condition of lawlessness, demoralization, brutishness. In it, the nation would only be a shapeless, wild, blind force, like that of the stormy elemental sea, which, however, is not self-destructive, as the nation, a spiritual element, would be. Yet such a condition may be often heard described as that of true freedom. This is the so-called freedom that a certain subset of libertarianism taught us to value. Under Americanism, virtue was the highest value. That was the mindset of the original conservative movement started by the John Birch Society back in the 1950s. When teaching Americanism got too dangerous, the elite switched it out with a synthetic substitute, the William F. Buckley crony capitalism version of conservatism, where Americanism was de-emphasized and capitalism was swapped out in its place, where virtue wasn't the highest value, but the libertarians taught us that freedom was. John Adams wrote, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." But modern libertarian ideologues taught us that no, what our nation really stood for was gay pride parades, marijuana, legalized prostitution. Vice, not virtue. Of course, such people always confused liberty with libertinism. The efforts of these quasi-conservative nihilists led to the erosion of the group spirit of a cohesive nation, which causes the whole country to effectively dissolve into chaos and random individualism, and a departure from the founding principles of its constitution. When Hegel talks about civil society in this situation, he says, "It loses its ethical character, for these persons as such have in their consciousness and as their aim not the absolute unity, but their own petty selves and particular interests." On display here is one of the new breed of libertarian individualists who preaches apathy, nihilism, and a willingness to relinquish the nation that so many who came before him fought to establish.
Hey, Mr. Walsh.
Hi.
So I am an American whose family has lived here for a long time. I had, I think 5 generations ago, a grandfather served in the War of 1812. My grandfather served in World War II, and I just finished up my Army service over in Monterey.
Thank you for your service.
Okay, now my question is this. Japan has a right to stay Japan. China has a right to stay China, right? No one is trying to pick and plug Bangladeshi migrant workers, Indian migrant workers into China, into Japan, and expect them to stay Chinese, to stay Japanese. So my question is, without calling me racist, I don't think you would do that. Why is it wrong to want to preserve our heritage?
You can go to any other country on earth, pretty much, and find countries that are, their unifying principle is ethnicity. I think our unifying principle is that doctrine and that set of ideas. And so when I talk about our country not being a country anymore, which I do feel that way, it's because we don't have that shared set of values and ideas anymore. Even something as simple as believing in human rights. Okay, I think that is a foundational to our country. But I also believe that a lot of people don't believe in that anymore, and so that's what makes it difficult for us to have a country.
Well, but my specific My specific question was, why would it be immoral for me to want to preserve my European heritage? And I didn't say, do you think we should? I said, why would it be immoral?
I think it's un-American, is what I would say.
But why would it be immoral?
I think it's un-American.
But that's
I'm not gonna try to get. I don't know why you're trying.
It's okay.
I'm not gonna try to get into your heart and your soul and find out what's going on there. What I'm saying is, I don't think it's American. I think it's flawed. And I just told you why I think it's American.
Is it immoral for me to want to preserve our European heritage?
I guess it would really depend on what motivates that. And if you're saying that it's not motivated by bigotry, all I can do is trust you on that. I can't look inside your soul. But I think it's un-American.
So it is bigoted of me to want to preserve European heritage.
I can't look inside your soul to tell if you're a bigot. I mean, it sounds like it, but I don't know. I don't know why you want me to do that. I can't read your mind.
So you're calling him a bigot? That is exactly what he said.
I tried about 10 times to
That's what you said.
Okay.
I'll do something that Matt Walsh couldn't. I'll actually answer the young man's question. According to Spinoza, in Chapter 8 of Ethics, it is virtuous to maintain your identity into posterity. He writes, quote, "Suicides are weak-minded, saying that anyone who acquiesces in his own destruction is a fool." He goes on to say, again, as virtue is nothing else but action in accordance with the laws of one's own nature, and as no one endeavors to preserve his own being except in accordance with the laws of his own nature, it follows first that the foundation of virtue is the endeavor to preserve one's own being, and that happiness consists in man's power of preserving his own being. In other words, to preserve your own being, your own identity into posterity, is not only rational, but virtuous. Spinoza goes on to say, therefore, to man there is nothing more useful than man, nothing, I repeat, more excellent for preserving their being can be wished for by men, than that all should so in all points agree, that the minds and bodies of all should form, as it were, one single mind and one single body, and that all should with one consent, as far as they are able, endeavor to preserve their being, and all with one consent seek what is useful to them all. Hence, men are governed by reason, that is, who seek what is useful to them in accordance with reason, desire for themselves nothing which they do not also desire for the rest of mankind, and consequently are just, faithful, and honorable in their conduct. The young man in the video, in accordance with Spinoza, quote, respected that desire in the rest of mankind to carry their cultures forward into posterity. He had no problem with China remaining Chinese, or Japan remaining Japanese. He didn't call to supplant them or change them in any way, but he merely asked for the same right, to exist. According to Spinoza, this desire to preserve one's posterity is the very definition of virtue. For some reason, Mr. Walsh had trouble formulating a coherent thought about this issue, because even in his statement, he had no problem with any other country in the world using culture, heritage, ethnicity, and religion as a unifying principle. He's even strident in his calls to protect the posterity of certain countries in the Middle East. To deny them their posterity, according to Mr. Walsh, would be the height of bigotry, racism, and villainy. He only singles out the United States as the one country on the planet Earth where preserving their posterity is wicked, xenophobic, bigoted, to use his own term. Only one country is singled out for this treatment. Mr. Walsh offers no rationale for this inconsistency. Cicero says that contradiction is the hallmark of falsehood. If you can spot a contradiction, you have successfully refuted a position as false. Mr. Walsh is peddling a contradictory, hence a false position. His job is to tell you that your suicide is virtuous. This runs afoul of every classic of ethics and philosophy, from Aristotle to Cicero to Spinoza. In this interaction, Walsh was exposed. As Hegel said, he is one of those people who do not believe that the Constitution arose as the expression of a particular people. As with standard neocon ideology, the U.S. Constitution was not created by an American people. It can just be grafted onto any group. This thinking was disastrous in the neocon attempt to remake Iraq into a Jeffersonian democracy. Hegel says that such graphs are, quote, silly and superficial. Hegel continues, a free state and a slavish religion are incompatible. It is silly to suppose that we may try to allot them separate spheres, under the impression that their diverse natures will maintain an attitude of tranquility one to another, and not break out in contradiction in battle. Principles of civil freedom can be abstract and superficial, and political institutions deduced from them must be, if taken alone, untenable. In other words, with all due respect to Mr. Walsh, no, the U.S. Constitution was not the creation of Islam, or the Japanese, or the Machaguenga tribe in Peru. It was the expression of the spirit of a particular people, the American people. Replace them wholesale, demographically terraform their land, treat them like expendable temps, and the whole system that they created will fall apart. The Founding Fathers would have been quite shocked if they had heard Mr. Walsh's contention that every other nation on planet Earth was built around a people, but that only the United States was not. The notion of America as a provisional country, an ideological state, depegged from a people, would have been quite foreign to the founders, who called their country a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Even the form of government that they chose, a republic, comes from the Latin res publica, the people's thing. But the nihilistic neocon concept of America as a hedge fund, a Walmart, may be an example of America reinventing itself, the country's second act. And we all know in plays what second acts bring. Could reading the New American magazine boost your heart health, support your immune system, and help you lose 20 pounds of unsightly fat? The answer is no. But you should read it anyway. It'll keep you informed and provide information that cuts through the noise of lesser news outlets. thenewamerican.com. And don't forget to subscribe to us on social media and hit that like button.